let's talk about something we all dread, the bad performance review. You know the feeling. You see it on paper and you just think, this is completely unfair. But what can you actually do about it? Can you sue your boss? Today, we're going to dig into a real-life court case that gives us a pretty clear answer.
So, picture it. You've been putting in the hours, you feel like you've been killing it, and then bam! Your annual review comes back, and it's bad. It feels personal, it feels wrong, and honestly, it's just infuriating. It makes you wonder, right? Is there any legal ground to stand on here, or do you just have to take it?
All right, to get to the bottom of this, we're not going to waste time on what-ifs. We're looking at a real lawsuit. It was all started by a civil servant who got a C on a review, and she wasn't having it. She decided to take her fight to the courts.
So meet the two sides of our story. On one side, we have Cao Chu-feng, a senior specialist who'd been working for Taiwan's Ministry of the Interior for almost 20 years. And on the other side, her own employer, who she decided to sue over that one bad grade.
This is the number that kicked everything off. A 63 out of 100 on our 2022 annual review. Now, in the civil service system there, that score gives you a C grade. For someone with her long track record, getting a C wasn't just a number, it felt like a massive slap in the face.
So, how on earth does a C grade spiral into a full-blown lawsuit? Well, as you can probably guess, there are two very different sides to this story. We've got the employees' version of events, and then we have the ministries.
It really boils down to this. Cao Chu-feng saw herself as this hardworking, dedicated employee who was being punished for no good reason. Basically, retaliation. But the ministry, they saw an employee who just wasn't cutting it, who was difficult, and whose performance had genuinely slipped.
So, from Cao's point of view, this whole thing was a setup. She laid out her case like this. Look, I've been here for 18 years. I've gotten promotions, I've handled huge projects. This C grade isn't about my work. It's payback from a manager I had a dispute with. She also made a really critical point. She said they broke the rules by not even giving her a chance to defend herself before making the grade official.
But the ministry, they came back with a completely different narrative. And they brought evidence. They pointed to specific, documented problems, things like submitting meeting minutes with errors and flat out refusing to accept her supervisor's changes on official documents. They even said she refused to speak with her manager, only using email. And about that procedural issue, they said, nope, we followed our own rules. Their policy says you only get a formal chance to respond if you get the lowest grade, a D, not a C.
Okay, so you've got two totally opposite stories. A classic he said, she said scenario. What is a court supposed to do with that? This brings us to the real heart of the matter, the legal question that this entire case hinges on.
Think about it. Is the judge's job to go back through all of her work from 2022, pull out a red marker, and decide if that 63 was fair? You know, maybe give her a few points here, take a few away there. A lot of people think that's what happens, but that's not how the law sees it at all.
The answer is all wrapped up in this really important legal idea. In Taiwan, the term is Panduan Yuud. But for us, the English translation gets the point across perfectly. It's called the margin of discretion. And you have to understand this concept to see why the case ended the way it did.
So, what this means is that courts basically say, hey, performance reviews are subjective. It takes a manager's personal judgment, their expertise, and watching an employee's work over a long period of time to make that call. A judge can't just swoop in after the fact and pretend to be a better manager. This principle gives the employer what they call a zone of judgment.
Now, that doesn't mean your boss can just do whatever they want. The court won't redo the review, but it will act like a referee. It checks for foul play. It looks at four main things. 1. Was the decision based on facts that were just plain wrong? 2. Did they follow the proper legal steps? 3. Did they base the decision on something totally irrelevant, like they just don't like you? And 4. Was this a clear abuse of power or done in bad faith?
So, knowing all that, let's get back to our case. How did the judge actually apply this margin of discretion idea to Cao Chu-feng's lawsuit? The final verdict makes it all crystal clear.
Honestly, the court's own words from the final judgment say it best. The judge basically said, look, this kind of thing is highly personal and requires long-term, close observation. For that reason, the court can't just step in and substitute its own opinion for the managers. It has to respect that zone of judgment we talked about. And the result? It was a total loss for the employee. The court looked at the ministry side of the story and saw that the C grade was tied to specific, documented issues. It found they didn't break any procedural rules for a C. So in the end, the court said there was no abuse of discretion. Every single one of our claims, from overturning the grade to getting our legal fees paid, was thrown out. Okay, so what's the big lesson here for the rest of us? Let's zoom out from this one specific case in Taiwan and think about what it means for anyone, anywhere, who gets a review they think is totally off base. Here's the bottom line. Trying to fight a subjective performance review in court is, well, a massive uphill battle. Unless you have stone-cold proof that your employer based the review on wrong facts, broke a specific law, or was clearly acting in bad faith, that margin of discretion gives them a whole lot of protection.
And that kind of leaves us with one last, really big question. If the courts aren't the best place to fight an unfair review, then what is? Maybe the real answer isn't about lawsuits at all. Maybe it's about building a better culture inside companies. Better training for managers, much clearer goals, and review processes that are actually transparent. It's a tricky one, with no easy answers. What do you think is the solution? Thanks for watching.